welcome to our discussion, third and last discussion video for PPE under government accounting. So we will continue under the heritage assets. So ano ba itong heritage assets under government accounting? This is mostly unique and peculiar in government accounting dahil yung mga ganitong classification ng assets ay makikita lang natin in the books of government entities. So, heritage assets are those which have historical, cultural, and environmental significance and are intended to be preserved for future generations. So, mas madaling tingnan yung examples para ma-identify natin na ito ay heritage assets, such as the historical buildings and monuments, statues, museum and gallery collections, archaeological sites, national archives, ruins, conservation areas, nature reserves, and works of art. So, dyan pa lang ma-identify mo na, okay, these are heritage assets because this concerns historical, cultural, and environmental significance for a particular country. So, ano ang measurement natin dyan? Paano natin ba nire-record yan in the books of a particular agency? This is measured at cost. So, ang initial measurement natin ng heritage assets ay doon sa cost niya, yung historical cost niya. So, kung ito ay acquired through non-exchange transaction, so pwede kasi yan ay donated or through a grant, the cost is the fair value at the acquisition date. Okay? His heritage assets are considered or subject for impairment but are not depreciated. Hindi natin dine-depreciate yan. Pero lagi nating chine-check kung ito ay mag-i-impair. Okay? So, rules on impairment, yung pag-consider natin ng recoverable amount, value in use, and among others na discuss natin kanina, the heritage assets will be subjected to that. But it will not be depreciated. Heritage assets that have future economic benefit or service potential are depreciated. Similar to other PPE items, example, yung mga historical building that are being used as offices. So, meron kasing mga ganyan. Yung mga historical offices that are not really for museum or for viewing purposes only but are also used for example, used as administrative offices or offices ng mga high-ranking officials in the government. Those types of heritage assets are depreciated under the rules of PPE. Okay? Heritage assets naman that are not recognized in the books of accounts are recorded in the registry of heritage assets. So, meron tayong tinatawag na registry of heritage assets. Okay. So, these are the rules on heritage assets. So, we'll look at now at infrastructure assets. So, itong infrastructure assets naman ay hindi lang ito yung bastang mga assets that are constructed by the government entities. But these merong characteristics na tinitingnan dyan. It should be part of a system or network. It is specialized in nature and do not have alternative uses. It is immovable and it is may be subject to constraints on disposal. So, mahirap normally yan i-dispose. So, ano ang papasok dito sa ganitong klaseng characteristics as provided by the GAM? This will include road networks, flood control projects, sewer, water, and power supply systems, communication networks, railways, seaports, airports, and the like. So, ito yung mga klase ng infrastructure assets natin. These are initially measured at cost and subsequently depreciated. So, generally, wala po itong residual value. So, kung meron mang infrastructure asset or equipment that are related to this, rule on residual value na at least 5% pa rin yung ating susundin. Next, the reforestation projects. So, ano ba itong reforestation projects? Yung reforestation, we know that it refers to the renewal of a forest cover by planting seeds or young trees. Kaya may mga tree planting because of the end view of reforestation projects. So, how do we recognize this yung mga ganitong klaseng project? These are recorded as land improvements in the books normally of DENR or other related government entity. Land improvements ang recognition natin diyan. So anong mga klaseng cost ang included in the capitalization of reforestation projects? This includes survey, mapping and planning, nursery operation and seedling production or procurement, plantation establishments which includes site preparation, hauling of seedlings and planting. So these are normally yung mga areas na kailangan uh, which are declared of national conservation na dapat ibalik natin yung forest cover ng particular. Normally ito yung mga nasa uh, yung mga conservation areas na naapektuhan ng massive cutting of trees, massive flooding. So, ito yung mga reforestation projects. So, dapat i-capitalize pa rin natin to dun sa books. So, this is recorded as land improvements. Okay? In the books of the DNR, generally DNR and other government agency concerned kung meron. So, how do we recognize this? While the reforestation project is not yet complete, which is normally more or less 3 years ang completion ng reforestation projects natin on the average in the Philippines. It is first recognized, initially measured, initially debited to construction in progress land improvement. So once it is completed, it will be transferred to land improvements under the subsidiary ledger reforestation projects account title. Okay. Ganun yung recognition natin sa kanya. So, meron tayong tinatawag na maintenance and protection cost. Kasi di ba kapag natapos na yung reforestation project, kailangan i-maintain yan. Hindi naman basta natapos ay iiwanan na lang yung reforestation project na yun. So, how do we look at this? Yung maintenance and protection cost daw na na-incur within the duration of the project, for example, yung mga fire lines, strip brushing, replanting, pest control, patrolling, and many others, yan ay ika-capitalize natin o isasama natin dun sa value ng reforestation project, ng land improvement na yun. Pero kung yung maintenance and protection costs ay na-incur na after na turnover yung project, i-charge na lang natin yun sa repairs and maintenance expenses. Okay? Kapag halimbawa merong mga trees, yung mga planted trees ay hindi nabuhay, so kailangan i-replace natin yung trees na yon. The cost of replacing trees are expense where small numbers of trees are being replaced in any one particular area. So kung halimbawa masyado ng malaki, so it is the decision of the particular agency to capitalize this. But normally, the cost of replacing the trees are expense when it involves a small number of items of trees natin. This is also not subject to depreciation but is subject to impairment tests. Okay? Hindi natin yan tinidepreciate but tinitingnan natin yung impairment niyan. So normally naman, ang nagiging impairment loss niyan is caused by fortuitous events such as yung mga typhoon, flood, landslide, earthquake, and many others. Mga reforestation projects na yan. Okay, let's look at how the recognition of PPE under the government accounting. So the carrying amount of PPE is recognized when it is disposed or when no future economic benefits or service potential is expected from the asset. Because this is no, ito naman din talaga yung rule on the recognition of PPE kahit na sa iba pang private entities. The gain or loss on disposal is recognized as gain or loss in the surplus or deficit accounts. The disposals of PPE shall be in accordance with the Supply and Property Management Manual and Section 79 of PD 1445. So, pwede mo na lang hanapin po itong Supply Manual and Section 69 of Presidential Decree 1445 dahil medyo mahaba po yung discussion dyan sa disposals ng PPE. Dinidetalye lang naman po dyan is how do we dispose PPE kasi hindi naman basta-bastang i-dispose lang yung PPE. So there are rules and there are forms na kailangan i-accomplish. There are approval and of signatories na dapat daanan dyan. Kasi remember, bawat PPE ay merong accountable officer bawat item. So hindi pwedeng i-dispose lang yan because that will tantamount to graft and corruption. So merong rule on provided by the decree and the supply and property management manual. Okay, let's take a look at items that you will encounter more, such as the terms idle PPE. So, what does idle PPE means? These are temporarily taken out assets of active use or temporarily abandoned. So, hindi na muna yan ginagamit at pwedeng inabandon. But in the books, this is not de-recognized. Continued to be depreciated pa rin yan sa libro. So, kahit na idle pa yung PPE na yan, halimbawa yung warehouse ay idle, yan po ay hindi nire-recognize but are continued to be depreciated in the books. While the fully depreciated property, plant, and equipment, what does it mean? This only means na this is self-explanatory, I guess. Yung carrying amount is just equal to zero or the residual value. This is not recognized since the historical cost and accumulated depreciation are not removed from the books. Okay, unserviceable property, those which do not have future economic benefits. This is the recognized and the carrying amount is recognized as impairment loss. So ito po yung mga items na wala ng service potential. So, ano ang gagawin natin dyan? Dinede-recognize na yan, inaalis na yan sa libro, reported in the IIRUP or the Inventory and Inspection Report of Unserviceable Property. Inaalis na yan dun sa mismong libro natin. And normally, itong unserviceable properties ay ibinibenta. Merong disposal, proceeds on the disposal yan. So, nagkakaroon ng gain or loss on the disposal dyan sa unserviceable properties na yan. Okay. And kapag ang unserviceable properties ay nai-report na natin and na-dispose na natin, nalilift na po yung accountability doon sa officer na kung saan naka-issue yung equipment na yon. Okay? Next, we will proceed now with the borrowing cost. So, borrowing cost is essentially same lang ito doon sa borrowing cost na natutunan mo on your financial accounting. Okay? But we will look at the syempre, yung conditions under the government accounting. So, these are interest and other expenses incurred by an entity in connection with the borrowing of funds. So, simply said that. So, example niyan, interest on notes, loans, bonds, and finance lease payables, amortization of discount, premium, and issue costs, and other foreign exchange differences. Kasi pwedeng mangutang on pwedeng foreign loans yan. So, merong foreign exchange differences. So, kung ano man yung cost related to that will be charged to the borrowing cost. So, how do we recognize this? So, meron tayong tinatawag na the benchmark treatment and the allowed alternative treatment. Under the benchmark treatment, yung borrowing costs are expense in the period it is incurred, while under allowed alternative treatment, the borrowing costs are capitalized if the borrowing costs are directly attributable to the acquisition of a qualifying asset. So, what does a qualifying asset means? A qualifying asset is an asset that necessarily takes a substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. Kaya siya qualifying. Kumbaga, in process pa rin siya until it is ready for its intended use or sale. Okay? So, kapag may ganong item, we have to look at using the allowed alternative treatment. There is a rule on the borrowing cost for national government and government agency loans. So kapag national government ang nangutang, which is recorded by the Bureau of Treasury, yung borrowing cost sa mga utang ng national government are expense. Ibig sabihin, benchmark treatment ang ginagamit. Okay? Pero kapag ang loan ay o yung utang ay ginawa ng government agency. Ibig sabihin po ng government agency dito is yung hindi siya yung national government but yung mga departments under that. Okay? Yung mga government agencies lang, yung borrowing costs are capitalized. if they relate to the qualifying asset. So, ibig sabihin, allowed alternative treatment ang ginagamit kapag government agency loans. Kapag national government loans, yan po ay expense yung borrowing cost. Yung borrowing cost po ang pinag-uusapan na yung borrowing costs on the loans made by national government are expense, but the borrowing costs on the loans made by government agencies are capitalized if it relates to the qualifying asset. Okay. Next, the rules on specific borrowings and general borrowings. So ito po ay natutunan mo na ito in your financial accounting, but we will just cite an example in government. So yung specific borrowings and general borrowings. So we know under specific borrowings, yung capitalizable borrowing cost daw would be the actual borrowing cost minus the investment income. Ano itong investment income na to? Pwede kasi na halimbawa ikaw ay nangutang, then yung inutang mo, dahil hindi mo pa naman agad yan magagamit agad-agad, dahil in progress naman ang construction, halimbawa, inilalagay mo yan sa isang investment. So kung ano man yung income na derive or na earn natin doon sa investment na yon will be a deduction to the capitalizable borrowing cost para lumiit yung capitalizable borrowing cost if it is specific borrowings. Kapag naman yan ay general borrowings, okay, we have to use the formula average expenditure multiplied to the capitalization rate. Yung average expenditure, paano ba natin kinukompute yan? Please proceed to page 275 of our reference book. Makikita mo dyan yung expenditures, the months outstanding over 12 months, and the average expenditure. I-multiply mo lang po yung expenditure to the months outstanding. And then, i-add mo total nun lahat. And then you will get the average expenditure. The capitalization rate naman will be computed as the total interest expense on general borrowings divided by the total general borrowings. Okay, how do we compute the total interest expense on the general borrowings? I-multiply mo lang po lahat ng interest rate doon sa inutang. So, 10 million times 12% plus 18 million times 14% plus 22 million times 16%. Ibig sabihin yan yung interest expense on a particular year. 7.24 million, you divide it to the total general borrowings kung magkano yung total na inutang. 10 plus 18 plus 22, that is 50 million. So, 14.48% ang capitalization rate. Yung na-compute mo po na average expenditure na 9.258333 times 14.48% is 1,340,607. That is your capitalizable borrowing cost. So, ito po yung capitalizable borrowing cost na i-add natin dun sa valuation ng ating PPE kasi i-capitalize natin yung borrowing cost na yan. However, there is a caveat or a warning here kapag nasa general borrowing ka. The borrowing cost capitalized shall not exceed the actual borrowing cost incurred. Yung i-capitalize natin na borrowing cost, dapat bago mo yan i-capitalize, i-check mo muna kung yan ay nag-exceed dun sa actual borrowing cost. Kasi kung nag-exceed, kailangan ang kuhanin mo is the lower amount. Okay, in this case, hindi siya nag-exceed dahil ang actual interest expense on the general borrowing is 7.24 million at ang na-compute mo lang na capitalizable BC ay 1.34 million. So therefore, gamitin natin yung na-compute na 1.34 million. Okay, that's how we do, we apply borrowing costs under government accounting. So I think that is the end of our discussion for the 3-part video under PPE on government accounting. Thank you.